Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's funny. Just like most people, I guess, if you'd asked me when I was 17 what I would be when I grew up, like, when you're 51, what are you gonna be doing? This wouldn't have cracked the top 100 for sure.
Yeah.
I was terrified of speaking in public, number one, and now I do keynote speaking and lead workshops and all the things. So, I mean, just even that would have been surprising to me. You're gonna make your living talking to people. That's what you're gonna do. No way in the world. And you're going to make a living writing. I'd never written anything. So it's been a crazy path to get here, but it's been a fun one. I guess it started when I was in college.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, saying, "Okay, we know where Canada is, and in British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right." And then there's the big city called Vancouver, right? And we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our European friends, 800 kilometers. And it is in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, west. And it is lots of forest here. Within 50 miles, there's probably 100 lakes, lots of other friends, black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, foxes, wolves, you name it, we have them all here, and we call it paradise. Today, a very special guest. His name is Brian Hite. Brian has a doctorate and is a Ph.D. He's known as the high stakes performance whisperer, an expert in transforming how individuals and organizations perceive and navigate high stakes environments. Very interesting topic, obviously. Brian has over 30 years of experience as a professional stuntman. That alone is an episode, in my opinion. And a decade of coaching elite military personnel, and is dedicated to life, helping people through illusions of stress and pressure. And we all like to know about that, unlocking clarity, achieving extraordinary results. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, tell us a bit about your background and your education. Your specialty is obviously psychology, and you got the doctorate and your PhD in that region, but also other things about that I think are so interesting. The varieties around psychology that are obviously very interesting, where you specialize in, and then how did you get into that study of focusing on psychology, in which areas, and where are you now, and how does it all tie together into what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's funny. Just like most people, I guess, if you'd asked me when I was 17 what I would be when I grew up, like, when you're 51, what are you gonna be doing? This wouldn't have cracked the top 100 for sure.
Yeah.
I was terrified of speaking in public, number one, and now I do keynote speaking and lead workshops and all the things. So, I mean, just even that would have been surprising to me. You're gonna make your living talking to people. That's what you're gonna do. No way in the world. And you're gonna make a living writing. I'd I'd never written anything. So it's been a crazy path to get here, but it's been a fun one. I guess it started when I was in college, and like a lot of people, I went to college with not really much idea of what I was going to do once I got out, but I went because that's what the expectation was. You graduate from high school, you go to college, that's what you do, and then you get a job, and then you get a family. Like, there's this whole expectation of what the path is supposed to look like.
Exactly.
And I got halfway through college, and I had no idea. I truly didn't. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I enjoyed psychology. I'd taken a psychology class in high school. I really loved it. I got into college. I majored in psychology. I really enjoyed the psychology classes, but no job that I had been exposed to really stuck out at me. But then I went to see the Batman stunt show at a Six Flags, which is a theme park in New Jersey. There are Six Flags all around the United States, maybe
Right.
around the world. I really don't know, but there are a
Right.
lot in the United States.
Right.
And I went to see this show, and a friend was a company manager of the show. So he had gotten me tickets, and a friend of mine, and I went, and it was phenomenal. I remember still this feeling that I I don't even know how to describe it, but there was an excitement, there was a clarity, there was this laser like attention and focus to the stage once the show started. And it started with a huge, literally a bang. Explosion went off, motorcycles came out of this place like jumping, and I was mesmerized. And I spent 20 minutes like that. And after the show, because my friend was the company manager, I was able to go backstage and talk to the people. And of course, I asked them what they'd probably been asked thousands of times and what I've been asked thousands of times since. How do you get to be a stuntman? How do you get this job? And they said,
Exactly.
well, to do this show, what you need to learn how to do are fights, high falls, and motorcycles. And so I linked up with one of the guys from the show, and he taught me fights and high falls. And I bought a dirt bike and I practiced it and got to where I could ride that okay. And went to the audition, got the job, and did that show the next summer. And it was the best summer, I think, to this day of my life. I mean, I was having so much fun. I was learning so many things. I was challenged in so many ways. I was meeting so many new people. And for the first time in my life, I had direction. I had purpose. I felt like I knew where I needed to go. I felt like I knew what was next. I wasn't just hanging out flapping anymore. I knew what direction I wanted to go, and it was stunts. And that was great until I got back to school, which had nothing to do with stunts. And it was incredibly hard to focus and to pay attention and to pay any attention at all to any of the schoolwork. So I started failing the classes. Somehow or another, I made it through one semester, the first semester of my senior year, but I was going to fail all of them the second semester. So I dropped out. I dropped out of college with one semester to go. And I did the show one more summer in New Jersey. And then I moved to Los Angeles to be a stuntman. And that's what I did for the next, I don't know, 10 years, 10 to 15 years or so. And along the way, I realized probably about 4 or 5 years in that I missed learning. I missed I missed that aspect of life. Stunts was fantastic and I was learning a lot, but it was all on the physical side. I missed the
Yeah.
intellectual wrestling with information.
Right.
And so and I only had one semester to go, and that bugged me. So I decided to finish the degree, which I did. I went back to New Jersey, spent a semester out there, finished the degree, and then continued on with a master's degree in sports psychology and a PhD in organizational psychology, but never with the intention of actually working in those fields. It was just interesting for me. It was like it was an avocation, it was a hobby. I really enjoyed learning about this stuff, and with the added benefit that because I was working as a stuntman in these high stakes environments where performance really mattered, I was immediately able to put into practice the things that I was learning through these programs. So that was really cool too. Is it wasn't just an intellectual exercise. I was able to put it into the real world immediately.
Right.
So I did that. And then, life does what it does. Next thing you know, I found myself married and I was working in Washington State at Fort Lewis for the US Army as a sport performance psychology consultant. And that's where I was for 2 years doing that, focused on, helping soldiers get their minds right when their performances mattered, whether it be on the range or if they were in a shoot house or if they were clearing buildings or doing medical tasks, whatever it was. Like, how do you get your mind right? How do you keep your attitude sharp? How do you keep your motivation up? And if you're a leader, how do you create conditions where those things can flourish? So that's what I focused on with the Army for 2 years. Then I got divorced, moved back to LA, did stunts again for another 4 or 5 years. Never stopped stunts, even when I was working at the Army. I was still doing shows that were in the area. It just wasn't my full time thing. Then I ended up, rinse and repeat, met another woman, got married, went back to the Army job. But this time it was at Fort Campbell, which is just outside Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I'm originally from and where I live now.
Okay.
So I worked there for 10 years, doing the same type of work initially, but then I transferred over into a different type of work that it really resonated with me, and that was resilience training. The Army had created a resilience program, and I worked my way up through the whatevers until I became the primary instructor for that resilience class. And I traveled around the globe doing this 2-week course for leaders in the Army around resilience. And I say it resonated with me because from a theoretical, psychological information standpoint, it's pretty much the same thing as performance psychology, sport performance psychology, but the intent was different. And the intent was what was important for me. And that was not trying to help people, perform better in whatever environment they're in, but how do you give people the tools and the resources that they can leverage and use no matter where they are or with whom? Meaning, if I have a challenging conversation with a spouse, or my kid is going through some problems, or I have a parent with some medical issues, how do I handle those circumstances to the best of my ability? And that more generalized approach, that broader way of looking at how do I benefit from these skills really, really, really struck me because they were very helpful for me personally when I have gone through challenging times, and to be able to provide that for others was really meaningful. So that's what I did. I did that for them until it was just time to go. It was, things come to an end, and that one was time to go. So I left and I opened my own business initially called Begin Again Performance Psychology, traditional sport performance psychology training with athletes. But I changed that around a little over a year ago, I guess. I started to shift away from I'm focusing on athletes and athletic performance or performing artists, because I worked with those as well, and corporate people, all that, to a more to the approach on the high stakes environments. Because what that allowed me to do is to bring in those 30 years of experience that I've had doing stunts. Because even again, while I worked at the Army the second time, I was still working on shows. And since I've left the Army, I've been working on shows for the last, how many years, 2, 3 years. So in fact, a couple of them just aired. There's an episode of The Cleaning Lady. It was episode 5, just aired not too long ago, where I was on a boat, fell off and bounced off a picnic table. And then there's an episode it's the season finale of Righteous Gemstones. I was one of the people came out the back of a truck and hit the ground and got up, got shot, got up, got shot. It's pretty funny. But anyway, so I stayed in stunts, and I continued doing stunts, but I was able to bring stunts more easily into the sport and performance world, meaning I was able to really harness and synthesize all of the various experiences from all the different components of my life to include the challenges that I've faced along the way, all into one package of high stakes environments when things matter, when the consequences are important, when you truly care about how things turn out. How do you create conditions to function not just in the moment, but over time? So I work with first responders. How do you deal with certain crises in the moment? That's one thing. But if you're trying to make a career out of it, how do you continue that over the course of 5, 10, 20 years? That's not easy. So that's where I've been able to land, and it's been so fun being able to again feel like I'm bringing my whole self into the business rather than just, okay, today I'm sport performance psychology guy, and today I'm stuntman guy, or today I also teach at a college, or today I'm college professor guy. It's not. I'm able to bring all of it in, and it's just been really enjoyable.
So, what comes to mind is a couple of things. I know from what you said earlier, you're in your early 50s. You're in
Mhm.
excellent shape because I can tell by your picture that you are. And obviously, as a stunt person, you have to be. And obviously, you take care of that part of you, because you still do stunts and you like it. And then the other thing that comes to mind, organizational psychology, to me, and not asking you to explain it right at this moment, comes to mind, what is it? And then the other part about it is that it appears to me that because of the stunts that became part of your life very early in your life already, 17, 18, early 20s, that that creates stress and anxiety, that kind of an environment, in my opinion, and that you change it so you became very good at managing that part, and in fact you like it. And there are people, including myself, that not by choice or but I spent most of my life in stress and anxiety, some self-imposed. Even now, I'm nearly 85. I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland during the war years, and I still remember far too much about it. Was affected by PTSD. In 19, we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945. It made such an impression on me as a 5-year-old that I knew from that point forward, when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I was going to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me, too young. And so then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, drafted for a little over 2 years. It was a good experience. Academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3, I failed grade 7 3 times. So then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? To my parents. And my parents were beautiful people. And some people suggested, send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So my grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber. So they said, at 12 and a half years old, let's send him to a furniture factory. And since the teachers basically said, well, John, nice guy, but he won't amount to much in his life, because he obviously is not bright enough to study and fails all those classes. But I always knew in my mind that I was just as smart as all the other people around me. And a lot of kids that want to school with me, and kids are hard on each other, as you know, is that what were my friends, that when I became a laborer, I'm proud of that today, at 12 and a half years old, they went on to college and university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, as I said. And, so but I was always wondering, who am I? And so I went through the Air Force, and then when I was 24, I decided I have to prove to me that I can do things just as well as anybody else, if not better than in some areas. I wanted to build this sawmill. I wanted to go to Canada, and then I wanted to build a sawmill. Well, the timber is in British Columbia, and so I wanted to start with nothing. So I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I left in July of 1965. I was not even 24 yet, and flew into Montreal, and then took the train across Canada. 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way. Anyway, so I landed, stopped in Vancouver, went through the immigration office, couldn't speak English, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. Fortunately, there was a German fellow there, and I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George. That's where they're building all the sawmills and all the other. So I'm still here now, 60 years later. I can still see the Greyhound station in the back there in the distance. And I stepped out of the bus. I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. But what I did have is, I've always been positive attitude, although I was inward more than extrovert. Passion. Whatever I do, I give it 125%, and I work harder than anybody. And even still today, at nearly 85, I still get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And yes, I did build the sawmill. I built another. It's not about that, but for illustration, I have 10 different companies and all these other kind of things. But there was still one thing about me that I still was struggling with. Who am I? Why am I different? And already then, when initially I had already businesses and everybody said, oh, you're so successful, and I didn't feel that way until I stepped into a store here in Prince George, and I picked up a book, and I have the actual book here. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. Is that, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction. And I don't know why I picked it up, and I looked at it, and this is the book. I picked it up in January of 1997. Already I had been here for 32 years and was quite successful in business. And I read it. It's about ADHD. And Dr. Halliwell, who wrote the book, has written 18 books. It's ADHD and has dyslexia, so do I. And I didn't know then. I had never even heard about ADHD when I picked up the book, and I wrote in it in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And there was a stigma attached to it, implying maybe a mental deficiency. Well, so I couldn't be too public about it, because obviously if I go to the bank and I make proposals to lend money to build more companies, and I've just said, by the way, okay, I have ADHD, and they would say, have a nice day, right? So not now, but then, so in any event, so the more I found out about ADHD, the more I looked at it, studied in the book. It took me 5 years before I would go to my personal doc, who had delivered our 2 daughters and was a friend. And he said to me, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And by then, I was 62 years old. And I do. And so, but it changed my life. But the interesting part about it is that from the time that I was 12 and a half years old and left grade 7 for the 3rd time, and basically was told, well, he won't amount to much in his life, so find him some kind of a job with his hands. And until I was 62, I did not know who I was. So there was nearly 50 years. Things have changed now. ADHD is better understood, and some other things, neurodeficiencies of some description, are better understood, but still not the educational system has adapted to it, that it is giving full credit to how do we deal with those individuals, because the frequency of occurrence, and it's somewhat interesting, Brian, that you may find that you're my podcast number 411, and on the Brink podcast 203, I did with Dr. Halliwell. And so, who wrote this book in 1993. I bought it in 1997, and it changed my life. And so the interesting part during that podcast was talking about I was living ADHD, better understood it by that time. I think it's a superpower. And so as we had a discussion, Dr. Halliwell and myself, podcast number on the Brink 203, is that I suggested, Dr. Halliwell is the expert, I lived it, I suggested to him that I believe the frequency of occurrence is probably maybe up to 20%. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. And then the other part that I found is that in all the time that I have been around, and all the time that I had exposure to very successful people, entrepreneurs, business people, and other people, that I found that, in my opinion, I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that 50% of the entrepreneurs, successful business people, in my opinion, successful is the operative, are ADHD. And he said, no, John, probably 75%. I agree with him. So that became a very, very important part in my life. The other part where I have similarities to you is that I was not a good communicator. And even not when I was already successful and up to about 2090, is that I could interact with about 3 or 4 people in my companies, but outside of it, I was not a good communicator. And then an ex-sister-in-law of mine said, "Hey, John, I want to take you with me to an organization called Toastmasters." And I said, "What's that all about?" He said, "It's about communication skills." And I said, "Are you going to ask me any questions?" She said, "No, you just sit there and watch it." And so I went to the club, found it interesting. In the middle of the meeting, somebody said, "Hey, John, tell us all about you." I said, "Oh my God, I'll never go back here." But I stayed in Toastmasters for 10 years and went to the highest level, distinguished Toastmaster, and it changed my life. So if I look back from with your specialty, in particular of psychology, you may find this interesting, the things that played a major part in my life and became likely the foundation, still affected by PTSD from seeing far too much during the Second World War that we should not have seen, the fear of losing. My mom and dad were married in 1938. They were happy. They had a beautiful place. My dad had a lumber and worked for a lumber company. They very quickly had a boy and a girl. And then my mother was pregnant with me. And then the whole world changed when Adolf Hitler, the dictator, decided to take a piece of Poland and next to capture most of Western Europe and invaded Holland in particular. So my dad was called into the Dutch army in April of 1940. And the last time they heard from him or saw him just before the bombing of Rotterdam. And for 5 years, they would not know if he had died or was alive. And so, and still even during 1944 in particular, and this exactly now as we speak about 80 years ago. So it's very much on my mind, and a lot of other people that were part of this was on their mind, is that the hunger period in 1944 in particular, where he cut off all the food supply. My brother, 2 years older than me, my sister 1 year older, the kids, we as kids would go every morning with gunny sacks in the railroad yard, pick up anything edible and burnable. And still, even now, 80 years later, I can still feel the feeling of hunger. And then the other part of anxiety. And so PTSD is still part of my life. And then the inner child. So, but the communications as I went through this, and then so that part still became a foundation. Then the schooling became, or the challenges that I had during the schooling, questioning myself, who am I? And then I felt I had to start over again with nothing in Canada. And so, and hence the suitcase, the 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, very little money, and then starting here, could speak the language, didn't have nothing, and then start to prove to me, not to anybody else, that I could do it. And then it changed my world with the other things that were coincidental. Speaking skills, now, as you indicated, I was a basket case in terms of communications, where now it's part of my life. That's what I do. I write. I'm a very active writer. I'm working on my 5th and 6th books. I do presentations all over the place. Obviously, I'm very active in podcasting and doing all of those things that. And the other part about it was that when I was in grade 3 and failed grade 7, I was very good at numbers, still am today, exceptionally, and I was a good writer, but not a good reader because of dyslexia. So that's kind of where we are today. And then, obviously, if I look back at nearly 85, And one of the last books that I did is, and I want to show you this one, is that Living Young, Dying Old. That's a picture of me, and I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And and I loved going to the gym, staying in shape, and and I still do that now very, very actively. And it's not about age, it's not about the number, it's quality of life that counts.
Yeah, well, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think that for me, quality of life, what I've come to recognize is it's you have to look at human beings as human beings, meaning that we're complex. There are a lot of different moving parts. And the way that I break that down is physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. And I mean, other people may have different ways, but I think that we as human beings at least have those components. And but to focus on any one of those, I think is it's certainly not as effective, and it may actually be counterproductive. I think that it's important for us to recognize that all five of those components of ourselves interact in ways that are inseparable. We can't pull them apart. In other words, you say you go to the gym. Well, when you do, that changes your physiology. It changes the neurotransmitter levels in your brain, which then affects how you think, which affects how you feel, which affects the likelihood with which you will approach somebody else socially and how you interact with those people if you do happen to come across them. So all of these things, they interact with each other. We wake up in a bad mood for whatever reason. Sometimes we wake up in a bad mood. Well, okay, well that mood then affects how much energy we have and what kind of physical activity. So they all come together. So that quality of life piece, I really can't emphasize to people enough. I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you. And when you assess quality of life, think about it in those terms, in not just in physical terms or how just all of them, all the things together. How well are we able to to do the things that we want to do and to really stimulate ourselves and to stay curious and stay connected with other people. I told you I did a lot of work in the resilience world. And if there's one thing that is abundantly clear, that is inarguable in the resilience space, it's other people matter. Relationships are the biggest predictors of whether people are capable of going through these challenges and coming out on the other side, not only without problems or without getting knocked down very far. I take it further than that. I want people to be better when they experience challenges. When you go through something hard, you should come out the other side of it wiser and just stronger than what you went in. These challenges that we face aren't things that should be thought of as things that tear us down little by little until, we're whatever, some pile of dust. That's not it. These are opportunities for us to learn, for us to grow, for us to solidify connections, develop new skills, understand ourselves and those around us and the world at large better than we did when we went in. They're opportunities.
So
And that's not just thinking about some people think about, all right, well, yeah, I hear you, Brian. You go through the hard times and you turn things into rainbows and unicorns. That's not the point at all.
no.
It's all about growth, improvement, and challenges are one great source of that growth and improvement.
And it becomes the foundations of who you will be, not only now, but also in the future. Looking back, like if I look at my own challenges, all the way to northeastern Holland, the Second World War, all the things that we did there, all the things that we saw, the challenges academically because of not understanding ADHD and those kind of things, kind of going through that period that was difficult, and then creating the challenge of starting anew again on the other end, on the other side of the world, from the ground up, and then going through all the steps. And actually, I wrote another book about that. The first one that I did, Against All Odds, is a book that I wrote about. This is the first one that I did, actually. A lot of people said to me, "Hey, John, you should write a book about, it's such an interesting life." But writing books, as you well know, is not easy. and especially not for a guy like me. And so for a period of time, I stopped, I started, I stopped, I started, and then about 6, 7 years ago, already well into my 70s, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I started this book here. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's not about how successful John is, just the opposite, actually, going through, as you indicated, all the ups and downs, but staying the course. And so, what I try to do in my way is that's why this is important to me, not so much the 25-47, but more so attitude, passion, work ethic, what will follow is success. Staying the
Yes,
course.
it's funny that you said that because there's a good friend of mine. His name's Doug Coleman, and Doug is 71, and he's legendary in the stunt world. If you looked him up online, you would see he has stunt coordinated and or second unit directed huge shows that you would know very, very well. And he's an incredibly interesting guy. He's very fun. He's been into magic for most of his life. He's been a member at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles for, I think, a little over 30 years. But he's just doing, he's just playing around and he does magic on set and it's something that he enjoys creating. Well, recently he decided he wanted to actually start doing some magic shows. And he hasn't been, that his as great as he is on set in front of people, being on a stage and doing the magic was scary, and it was something that he didn't have the skills for and recognized he wasn't comfortable with, but he just stepped out and started doing it and started to perform a little bit more and a little bit more, and 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 now he's doing a show. I think Sunday, as a matter of fact, for the Young Presidents Organization at their big national conference in San Francisco. This is a guy, again, he didn't start a couple years ago when he was 70 years old. He started doing magic shows, and the reason that
Right.
what you said made me think about him is that he's got a motto. Is like his he's calling it his tour, his magic tour that he's doing right now at the various shows. He calls it "If not now, when."
Exactly.
That's his theme. Want to do it? Great. When are you gonna do it? I'll
And
do it
and
tomorrow. Oh,
and
not now. When? When are you gonna do it?
it probably follows your presentation that there is it's never too late. And then the other part is that I wrote a book about that as well. Is that I found that, and that makes this so interesting. I think it was on a U.S. television station where they said and I think Canada is the same actually, that 75% of the people that have a job in the United States don't like the job. It's the same in Canada, I'm sure. 70% of the 75% are looking for another job. And a lot of times when I do presentations now, and to young people, to colleges, university, and a lot of times when I do presentations, I ask some of them as saying, okay, what are you going to do after this? They say, I don't know. And I said respectfully that I believe it's important to get a direction as to what would you like to do, and how would that fit in the rest of your life is critical, because that will become you and your environment. If you don't like what you're doing, you take it with you into relationships, your home life, and all the people around you. And so, but and again, respectfully say, you want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver. See what they're doing. Should you own the truck? Should you not? Should it be long distance, small distance? So all those things about it. And they would like to talk to you about it. Or you want to be a contractor that builds houses or whatever. Talk to somebody and saying, what is involved? Should I be the contractor? Should I blah, blah, blah. The more you find out about it, you can then set it aside and say, okay, something to consider. Or you want to be a lawyer and go talk to a lawyer. First say, well, just a question, don't bill me. No, I'm just kidding. But in any event, they would love to talk to somebody and saying, what direction, what do you do, what is attractive about it, blah, 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 all the other kind of things. Or for that matter, an accounting individual, either in a firm or whatever it is, or specializing in financial management, whatever. Or you want to be an entrepreneur. Talk to entrepreneurs, like people like myself. I get people every so often coming up to me and asking me, and I'm delighted, because what more I can tell them. So what The message is this one, and that's why I wrote the book about it, is finding your passion, living the dream. And saying that, then being said, a fair question would be, is that for me, I started working physically when I was 12 and a half years old. Now I'm nearly 85. I will be 85 November the 1st, actually. And so in the 73 years that I've been working, are you living the dream, John? I am. Every day, even now still. And that's why that is so important. And that's also the part that you touched on, is finding this between psychology, initially going to the schooling, then going into stunting, and then saying to yourself, okay, I gotta go back. Now I have the passion, I know what I want to do. Let's finish my masters, and then from there on in, go further and become specialized in psychology and certain areas, and get a Ph.D., and then still go further into stunting again. And so I believe you would be an example of finding your passion, then become a presenter. And I know, starting from the bottom and thinking that if somebody would have said to me, I would become a major presenter or doing podcasting like what we are doing now, which is the new media, that is being watched around the world. And I'm not bragging. I'm approaching 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And so there could well be, there you and me, Brian, are having a conversation like we are sitting side by side. I believe you are in, I'm not sure where you are now, in LA or somewhere in the United States. And I'm sitting in central British Columbia having this discussion. We never met before now, other than looking at your bio. And we're talking about things that are very, very important to a lot of people. And they are watching us. It could well be a couple of million people are watching us around the world. It's amazing. It is still at its infancy, but that's where the future is.
Yeah, I think about the passion thing a little bit differently, I think, than what you described, or maybe not. I don't know. Let me just tell you how I think about it, because it ties to goal setting. In the Western society, people it's ubiquitous. Everybody says you got to set goals, and that's what you have to do. And if you don't have any goals, then you're pretty much worthless. And and I agree to a certain degree with that. I mean, identifying directions and things we want to achieve, or directions we want to go, or even less than that, or more than that. In addition to that, how do we want to be? We can set goals around that. I want to be curious. I want to be a lifelong learner. I want to, I want to be kind. Like there are things like that we can do too. But one of the problems with goal setting is that we can become so fixated on what we've identified as the thing that we are supposed to do, or that we want to do, or that we've said we are going to do, that we miss out on other opportunities. So you mentioned my life, and it sounds like yours too, is a perfect example of I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know how I'm going to get there. This opportunity popped up, and so I'm going to take it. And so we'll see where this one runs. And when the next opportunity comes up, I hope I recognize it, and I'll jump on that too. And when that one comes, ride that train as far as it goes. But it's not about, let me pick a thing, and that's where I'm going to go. And now I backward plan. Okay, so that's what I want. This is where I'm at. How do I get from where I am to where I'm going? I need steps A, B, C, D, and E. And and if one of those steps doesn't work out, then I have to work really hard to get back to that step, so that I'm back on my path and I'm back going the direction I'm supposed to go. That's, again, it's not wrong to have some direction and to have that guidance, but man, every day we meet new people, we learn new things, and what we thought was a good idea yesterday might turn out we may think very differently about it today, because we've
Exactly.
learned new, we've met somebody new, we've read something new. We don't see the world in the same way, and that's a good thing. Now I've got more information. I can reevaluate, what are my goals? What are the directions I've chosen for myself? Not only in terms of doing, but being. do those still make sense to me? Do they still align with how, have things set up and what I really enjoy? I think that's important too. So, did I, watch this show and become very passionate about stunts and the challenges? Yes, and it wasn't the first. I mean, I'd spent a childhood jumping bikes and climbing trees and all the things you would think that a stuntman would do. I did all of those, and so it didn't shock me when I saw this thing, and I was like, "Well, yeah, that sounds great." And to then pursue it, what it did kind of surprise me a little bit when I got into the psychology stuff and really enjoyed that as much as I did. But it's not about whether we're surprised or not surprised. It's about that recognition. It's about awareness. What what right now today is something that I care about, something that matters to me? What is something that I really think is important and worth my time? And time is it is a resource. It's a resource and it is probably the most valuable resource, I would argue, because it's the only one that can't be replenished. If we run out of money, you can get more money. If you run out of, I don't know, if you get hurt, you can get your physical stuff back. But if we run out of time, you're done. There just
Exactly.
isn't any more. You can't make more of it. So to recognize, all right, in this moment, what is worth my time? That's an important thing to understand. But because something's worth my time or seems like it will be today, doesn't mean that it's going to be tomorrow. And I have to be okay with that. Okay with shifting directions, okay with opening up because you never know when those opportunities are going to come up. You never know. But if you're so fixated on I'm going over there that we miss the opportunity to go over there, well, that's too bad. And there's a talk that I give on this. It's called Always on the Path. You mentioned this as well, with the future that I forget how you alluded to it exactly, but the way I frame it is when we look behind us, the path is very clear. You can see exactly where you've been, all the twists, turns, ups, downs, all the things. You can see it very clearly. But when we turn in front of us, there is no path. There is nothing there because the future doesn't exist. It manifests in the present moment. Every step we take creates our path. It doesn't already exist. I think about it like for anybody familiar with, I mean, I'm not a physicist, quantum physics, but I read about it a little bit, and this concept from quantum physics has resonated with me. The idea of what they call a wave function, meaning everything is possible. Now, some things are more probable than others, but everything is possible. That's the way I see the future. And then once we take the step, that's when the wave function collapses to a single point. And now we have reality in this moment right here. And that's the only reality that exists. So can I look behind me and very clearly see my traversing through whatever? Yes. Is it tempting to say, "Oh yeah, I did look at how crazily my life went together. I did this and then that led to this and I would have never gotten there if that hadn't happened." And you're absolutely right. 100%. But it wasn't destined to happen. That path was created the same way your future path will be, one step at a time in the present moment. And as long as we can recognize that the future isn't set, that there is no path, we can never be off the path because the path is it's under our feet by definition. Every step we take creates the path. So there is no off the path. To me, I think I've gotten a lot of mileage in that through, especially some of the challenging times in my life, and some of the times of indecision in my life where I feel like I should have it all figured out. I should know exactly where I'm going. I should know exactly what the day is going to bring and what next week and next year. And I don't. And I sometimes feel guilty about that. But when I bring this idea to mind, I'm always on the path. The path is manifesting now. And
Exactly.
obviously future is going to come, but it will be the result of what happens today. What I do today is what's going to affect what the future is. And 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 as long as we can keep that in mind, man, it brings a lot of power to us. It doesn't take away uncertainty about the future, but it does allow us to understand the control that we have in the moment to affect the future.
I agree, Brian. And then the other part is then I'm a little bit older than you are, but say at 85, nearly 85, What is important to me is I'm still excited about every single day. I still look forward to opportunity. It's not called money. Money is secondary. That does not even exist. It's not that's not why I'm doing all the things that I'm doing. And it is the most important part for me at this stage in my life is quality of life. And that means I'm preoccupied about diet. I'm preoccupied about staying physically fit and healthy and mentally be challenged. And the challenges for me are in the companies that I have, in the podcasting that I do, the books that I write. So, and then looking forward to me is that I love podcasting for all the reasons that you likely do. It's an amazing challenge, but it is the media. Podcasting will become the media of the future. It is not news reports, it's not newspapers, it's podcasting. And then the other part that I'm looking, I want to go to a platform so we can, and I can share with people, not for the purpose of selling anything or making money so much, but simply sharing my experiences that may be helpful to others. And that is at the end of the day, what is the foundation in my life is attitude, passion, work ethic, but will follow is success. And then diet and the simple things about it, keeping it simple. What I try to do is get lots of vitamin D, either in sunshine or in supplements, and get at least 7 to 9 hours sleep for me, then stay fit and healthy, and diet. My wife is a vegetarian, believe it or not. I do all the shopping for her, and for us. And if I go to a store, I stay on the outside of the store because all the inside alleys have processed food or super processed. And if I don't know what is in it, I likely don't want it. So those, and I keep it as simple as that. And then again, mentally, every day to me is a new day. I'm excited about it. Doesn't mean that some days are not quite as good as others, but it's seldom that I will be negative about it. And it has nothing to do with money. And in fact, communication skills to me are critical. And I'm working on a book, and you can see it behind me here. It played such an important role in my life that this book will come out in July, and it's about communication skills and the importance of it, as that is the foundation. And I refer to it as the $1 billion, communication skills. And they interviewed probably looked at a number of very successful billionaires, at what made them successful, and why did they become so successful. And a lot of times they're becoming effective communicators. And so that changed their lives. And so that's why I wrote a book about it. And it affected my life as it did yours. That I believe that is a very, very important part in life. And education as we know it, the system for me didn't serve me well at the time, but that is formal education. Life taught me a lot of things that I could not have learned, and no matter how long I would have stayed in the educational system, but that was my vehicle to learn and have an interest in all the things that are happening around the world, and opportunities that present itself. A lot of people ask me, how do you become successful, and blah blah blah, and all those kind of things. Well, or have the misunderstanding about entrepreneurship. What you do if you become successful, you spend all your time thinking about holidays and bringing money to the bank. I say, no, that's not the way it is. So you have to be prepared to look at opportunity. Success will try to find you. You have to just recognize it, as you said earlier, not being focused on one direction and not seeing anything else happening. So I'm always open to things approaching me. And so even still at nearly 85, I still look at growing my companies. I'm still, being very active in the podcasting, still very active in writing, and still staying very active physically and mentally, and trying to, and the other part that I was going to mention to you is that coming from the war years, I fly around a lot, do a lot of business in the United States as well. But anytime that I fly in a plane, I usually sit by the window and I look out of the window and I say, it's paradise. Compared to the rest of the world, we're the luckiest people in the world in North America. And especially if I look at Eastern Europe, the Ukraine comes to mind, Middle East, Venezuela, China, Russia, and I can go on and on and on. We are the most fortunate people in the world. And hopefully we recognize it and keep it that way. So.
Yeah, one thing you said really it struck home. I did a podcast
I lost
yesterday
I
or
lost your
day
voice
before.
there.
What's
Oh
that?
yeah, you're back. Yeah,
You got me back? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I did a podcast either yesterday or the day before, and for whatever reason they put in there one of the topics. There were a couple different guests on there. It was me and some other guy. But it was something about mastery. And the very first question they asked, like, what about mastery? I didn't get mastery. I said, I don't know. The guy was talking and I don't remember what he said. But when it came my turn, I was like, I don't think I believe in that. I don't think that that's even a thing. I think that, for any of the people out there in the philosophy world, you can think of mastery like one of Plato's forms. It's this thing that we say exists, and in some like it's if there's perfection, we can conceptualize it in a theoretical sense, but in reality, it's not there. So mastery, I don't see that. And so when you were talking about the entrepreneurship, what came to mind are two things. One is curiosity, just staying open and just wondering, just wondering what's next, or what if, or how does that go? And I think that curiosity can be fueled by the second thing, which is humility, recognizing that we don't have it all figured out. We don't know everything. We can't know everything. And if you keep that humble attitude of I don't know everything, there I don't have it all figured out, that can stimulate that curiosity. Well, let's learn more. There's clearly more to learn.
Exactly,
I don't know it all. So let
exactly.
me go look and see what else is out there. And once we find that it's that pursuit. It's that pursuit that I think is the interesting thing along the lines of that stuff that we care about.
Yeah, and the other part, you made a point of it, and so did I, is that I started realizing, looking back a bit, that to circumstances beyond my control, when I grew up as a little 5-year-old in the schooling, that had a change on my life. Then going to Canada changed my life. And then communication skills, I had the natural ability, but the self confidence and all the other things are required. It took time for me to unlock it. And obviously, now that has become a big part of my life. And then I'm a good writer. And it took time to unlock that. So, and the point that I would like to make to anybody that has talked to me about it and saying, and seeing what I'm doing and saying, well, I'm 45 years old or 50 or 55 years old, whatever they are, and saying, I'm too old for that. I don't want to go to the gym because I'm too old for that. My suggestion is you're never too old. And you can start anytime, but the most precious thing in life, I believe, is not money, it's not success, it's not all the other things. It's quality of life in terms of as you go through the years and then keep that curiosity about what is going on in the world and that is rapidly changing, and enjoy it, and
Yeah.
look and avoid negative. So many people are negative. I said, don't even come close to me because I'm a believer. I've seen the opposite. And I love where I am. I love North America, where we are, and the things that I do. But those are the most important parts to me.
Yeah, there's I think that there where you many people get stuck with what you were talking about of I'm too old for this, is I think they may be focusing on the wrong thing or defining success in the wrong way. So for example, Will I ever play quarterback in the National Football League? No, that's not going to happen. I could try, I could work, I could put all the effort in that I want to put in, but at 51, about to be 52, and with a bum shoulder because of whatever motorcycle, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be
No,
able to play quarterback. So, am
no,
I right in saying, yeah, I'm too old for that? It's just
yeah,
not going to work.
no,
Yes. However, if what is it about quarterback that I care about? Is it engaging with a team? Is it leading? Is it figuring out strategy? Is it executing to the best of my potential in a certain area? I can identify what it is that attracts me to playing quarterback in the NFL and identify other environments where I can bring that to bear, where I can live that out and I can improve and I can see the same benefits. So it's just about redefining maybe what the goal is, but certainly the rationale, understanding the rationale underlying that goal. Why am I choosing it in the first place? What is it about that that really matters to me? Because if I can identify that, and then I can find a spot in my life where I can put that into practice, well, no, you're not too old for any of that. So
exactly.
so yeah, that's what came to mind when you were talking.
Say, Brian, have you got a website that anybody that wants to contact you, can you share that with us? And then we'll put it
Yeah,
on there
yeah.
when we release it.
Absolutely. My website is www.brianhiteglobal.com, BrianHite global.com. You can email me at brian@brianhiteglobal.com. And I'll tell you, just if anybody out there if you operate in high stakes environments, meaning again, you find yourself regularly in situations that really matter to you where the consequences are important, and you've experienced stress, pressure, challenges with motivation, maybe burnout, please give me a shout because they're all things that I've dealt with myself in some of those high stakes environments. They're very challenging, but they can be overcome. We can develop skills, we can improve, and we can get to the place where we can be more consistent with higher levels of well-being. So please reach out to me. And again, I do speaking workshops, etc. So if anything that I've said here triggers anything for you or you think that it'd be good for your organization, please reach out. I'd love the opportunity to talk to you about it.
And people around the world watching us, subscribe to our podcast. Have you got a podcast as well, Brian?
Sort of. A friend of
Okay.
mine and I, he's another stuntman. We do a podcast called Poking Holes in Blinders, but he stays too busy for us to do it very often. So I'm about to launch my own podcast here before too long called Flow Under Fire.
Okay.
So be on the
So,
lookout for that in the next couple months.
okay. And then if you want to stay in touch with Scott, and then I'd like to be a guest on your podcast if I can.
Absolutely.
So in the meantime, let's make sure that for those people that are watching our podcast and find it interesting, subscribe to us, share it, like it, make comments on it, and then look forward to Brian's podcast that is not too far away. And again, Brian, thank you for being on my podcast. That was a privilege. Very, very interesting topics.
I really appreciate you having me on. I've enjoyed the discussion and thank you so much. I'm happy to come back whenever. And once I get mine up and going, you'll be getting a call.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. Take care.